Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Let's begin. In other news for this evening, the trending development on the internet. Recently a private, anonymous website has begun to make waves here in Japan. The site, dubbed Danger is Near, has caught the public by storm. It was first made live about 3 months ago with little views and traffic, and serves as a notification center for various danger zones in and around the inner city. Bulletins are posted periodically and at seemingly random times of day, in order to warn the general public to avoid certain areas of the city at certain times. Each warning is vague and seems to encompass either a wide range of area, or even at times a specific corner of a street with no other details posted except for anyone in the vicinity to be on guard and cautious. Warnings are commonly ranked from wary, the lowest danger level, to deadly, the highest, and of which no warnings have been posted in this ranking as of yet. The website went fairly unnoticed up until about 2 weeks ago, when a warning appeared on the website detailing an event of a beware danger level posted, and said to be honed in on a strip of abandoned factories in the northern section of the city. Not a few hours later, seismic activity caused the base of the factory buildings to become unstable and collapse in on themselves. Thankfully, there were few injuries and no deaths following this event, but the warning posted concerning this area of the city and subsequent disaster have now fueled an intense amount of interest in the Danger is Near website, with views skyrocketing and subscribers to the notification tripling in only a few days. Further analysis of previous warnings posted to the site have revealed a streak of accidents, muggings and villain appearances centered on or near the areas that had been ranked as dangerous. Almost all warnings have cautioned people away from these areas with surprising accuracy. Currently, no one seems clear about how it could be detailing the areas of disaster in advance. Talk over the web has people speculating that someone with a precognition type quirk must be behind its various warnings. But with the anonymous nature of the site, no one knows who is responsible for creating it or who maintains it either. Authorities have been unable to track down the owner of the website. They are certain that Danger is Near's mysterious proprietor must be someone living inside the city itself. Reports released from the police have confirmed the origin of the postings are unable to be pinpointed. Whoever it is in charge of Danger is Near, for now, the site seems to have people's best interests and safety in mind. Since the sparked interest in the website, there has been a significant drop in people in the areas that are given warnings about, meaning that the general public seem to be taking the warnings to heart. A link to the Danger is Near website can be found on our website. Dude, this Danger is Near website is insane. I know, right? Did you see the news last night? Hell yeah. There was a warning about Sume Street and a few hours later, some lady got hit by a car, right? It totally predicted something bad was gonna happen. How would anyone know? That must be one super awesome quirk. Wait, this site is real? It's not just a hoax? No, I totally thought it was somebody just messing around at first, but stuff is actually happening where the warnings list. That's crazy. Can you imagine the factors that go into disasters and accidents? It has to be impossible to predict something happening, even with a quirk. You said someone got hit by a car? Were they alright? Oh yeah, totally. The police have started sending a car to the places that the warnings talk about, since so many of them actually warn about something that does happen. They had someone there already, and they called an ambulance right away. The response time was almost instant. I heard some of the pro heroes are starting to swing by and check out the places that get warnings too. A few have been able to even avert the crisis altogether, because they were already expecting something bad to go on. Whoa. So I guess in a way, the person who runs Danger is Near is kinda like a hero too, huh? Yeah, you're right. Police would like to remind the general public that while the Danger is Near notification system has been fairly accurate in predicting disastrous situations, do not let yourselves be lulled into a false sense of security when in places outside of the mentioned locations. Whoever is behind the DIN site cannot possibly account for all dangerous situations in the city. The police will remain as diligent as ever all over the city, and not just in those areas given warnings about. We ask the citizens to stay alert as always, as to avoid trouble. The police were only 3 minutes away, after I was attacked. I didn't pay any mind to the Danger is Near hype going on, so I had no idea I was anywhere near the warning zone. But the police knew, and they were already on the lookout in the area. I honestly think I'm alive right now because they listened to the warning. Another accurate warning from DIN, a villain has been arrested outside the Kyoto National Bank, which lies on the street. A risky warning was issued through the site. DIN has tripled in subscribers since its sudden spur in popularity, making it one of the most viewed sites since going live 8 months ago. You know what I think? Why doesn't the guy behind Danger is Near just reveal himself already? What's with the hiding all this time? You all know the police can't find this guy. He's gotta be using some high-tech stuff to bounce his signal around so they can't get a beat on him. Who does that? Criminals, that's who. How do we know all these warnings aren't just some clever way of teasing us that he's gonna cause trouble himself? Pro hero. Gran Torino apprehends a supervillain near Camino Ward Mall, to which a DIN warning had been issued for the block. Gran Torino refused to confirm whether or not he had been in the area because of the DIN warning, but speculations think it likely as there has been a large number of pro heroes putting stock into the warnings since its upbringing, now 10 months prior. The police chief has issued an official request that the owner of the Danger is Near website come forward and contest to how the warnings are issued and chosen following the investigation of the death of a young boy in the vicinity of the area. A perilous warning was posted. The police chief has refrained from commenting on the rumor if the DIN owner is being asked forward as a murder suspect in the boy's death. There is still no word on the one behind the Danger is Near website. Rumors of an arrest warrant and federal action has begun to circulate. Despite suspicion surrounding a young boy's death, and the warning related to it, the Danger is Near site has continued to gain subscribers to its notification system. However, in the last month, the warnings posted to DIN have dropped significantly. Is this sudden decline due to the accusations and rumors of murder? Are they covering their tracks? Avoiding the authorities? Or is it something else? But more than anything now, everyone is asking, who is Danger is Near? My little boy is gone, he was taken from me and someone knew. Danger is Near knew. They knew something bad was coming, and all they did was put up some vague little post on the internet. Why not go directly to the police? Why hide now, after what happened? How could there possibly be any sort of quirk that predicts so many bad things? Even if there is, why keep it to yourself and refuse to let yourself be made public? Danger is Near was asked to step forward, explain themselves, and yet they have stayed hidden. What reason would you have to do that? All you had to do was talk to them. What are you hiding? Do you have something to do with why my little boy is gone? Do you guys really think Danger is Near is some sort of villain? I don't know. I mean, the warnings were helping people, right? People's lives were spared by some of those postings. Yeah, but this whole thing about that kid? It doesn't make sense. If Danger is Near is supposed to be about helping people, why keep hiding if you've done nothing wrong? The site is private and anonymous. It's been that way since the start. Maybe they just never wanted the spotlight? This is about clearing their name of murder. If they were innocent, they would have stepped up the instant the police asked. I guess. There will be no arrest warrant served for Danger is Near, despite murmurings among the masses. The police have said they have no true evidence that Danger is Near is directly involved in the murder of a young boy 2 months prior. Upon further investigation, they have ruled it an accidental death given the boy's prior medical conditions, and believe that Danger is Near only did as they have been doing so far, giving warning to the police under the jurisdictions found in the revised Good Samaritan laws, and therefore have no grounds to order their arrest. They are still asking that Danger is Near step forward, however, though it seems unlikely the request will be fulfilled. Today there is a protest being held outside the police station in outrage to the decision to strike Danger is Near off the suspects list. Despite all this, Danger is Near continues to provide warnings, and there has been nothing said on the website itself in regards to the situation involving the boy's death, or any other related rumors. Is something wrong? Oh, no, not really. You've been acting off lately. It's nothing, leave it be. Alright, if you're sure. Hey, did you get the notification? The teachers seem really agitated about it. Why not? UA's supposed to be tight on security, but Danger is Near said UA was ground zero for something bad today. I'm not worried, this is a school full of heroes and heroes to be. We'll be fine. Bullet train derails, heroes flock to the scene, but 13 casualties and dozens more injured. Where was Danger is Near and their warnings this time? Something that big? You would think DIN would have posted something. I mean, the dude's warning about street corners and petty thefts. I know, seems pretty useless if you miss something so big. Do you have any idea how many accidents happen in a day? How many dangerous situations? Do you expect one person to know about all of them? I guess not, but still. Who says it's only one guy? For all we know, it could a dozen people. Regardless if it's 1 or 100, there's countless of things going on all over, all at once. No one can predict everything. You not eating with us today? No, forgive me if I wanted to avoid Yamada's loud voice for one day. Is that the only reason? No, yes. Danger is Near is doing so little. Why won't he just show himself, huh? If that guy has a quirk that can predict danger, he should be working with the heroes or the police directly, not fucking around on the internet. I, and the rest of the teachers here at UA would like to make it clear, if one of you is responsible for the website, Danger is Near, please tell us. You are in no trouble, but given the situation, and the backlash the media and the public have spurred against this individual, if it is any one of you, we would like to help you. We understand that your intentions with the website were nothing but good. It is sad to see such conflict spurred over this, but conflict has erupted nonetheless. If Danger is Near makes themselves known to any of the staff, we will do everything we can to help settle the issues. We understand that it must be hard for you to handle and come to terms with the backlash and the rumors that have begun to spread about the DIN moniker. There are a number of you with the skills and the quirks that would allow you to be the handle of such a website, so in the event that one of you students is indeed Danger is Near, we thought it best to give you opportunity to come forward, and let us help you. Hey, Toshinori. I didn't see you there. You're pretty far from home. Did you come all the way here just to find me? Was there something you needed? Just be careful. I'm always careful. No, I mean it. There's something bad that's gonna happen. I don't know what, but it will, and I think it's gonna happen around you. Why would you think that? I can feel it. That was the day before Nana died. What do you think, Shota? I think you're too damned loud. Come on, come on. This whole mess going on with danger is near. I know y'all gotta have something to say about the whole keeping hidden thing. Tch. Whoever the hell it is, whatever their original plan was, it's backfired. Warning people of possibly dangerous situations has its benefits, and it's a fairly noble intention. But it's not a wonder the public image has turned sour. Not when they decided to keep hidden after all the bad things, and the outcry. Very true. And what about you? What if they thought it was better that way? How is any of this better? Half of Japan hates the guy and thinks he's some sort of villain, and the other half are quickly starting to go down that road. The minute he decided to keep everything a secret and not give anyone even any hint of who he is, or even what kind of quirk he has, he screwed up. If this guy really does have some sort of precognition quirk, he'd have been better off staying away from anonymous postings on the internet and better served joining a school and learning to become a hero, or even a police officer. The secretive, lone wolf behavior borders on vigilantism even if he's not out there getting into fights or getting his hands dirty. A quirk like that is more useful in the real world, not hiding behind a name on the internet. Shota, please report to the principal's office. This is about your classmate. I've heard you are friends with her. The situation is tricky, but as it is, she's missing. Aneko, I screwed up. Oi, you're not asleep, are you? There was a head of messy, black hair all splayed about over his arms as his face remained tucked in them against the table. At the lack of a response, she supposed the answer was likely yes, but the way his shoulders and back moved up and down said otherwise. She'd taken the seat right in front of the desk he was asleep at, her legs straddling the back of it as she lightly tapped the top of his head. He stiffened immediately, a low grumble that was halfway a sigh coming from him as his head tilted up, his chin still in his arms and tired eyes locking on her sitting in front of him. What? He grumbled flatly. You can't pretend to be asleep all the time. Aren't people in the hero course supposed to be the model students of UA? She asked, her voice soft and easy and so calm. You've been in this class only about a week, should you really be trying to slack off already? He blinked at her slowly, before his eyes fell closed with a sigh. Don't lecture me. His head lifted out of his arms as he pushed his hair out of his face a little with one hand, while the other moved to take the earplugs out of his ears. She blinked, smirking slightly as her eyes found them. Oh, so this other guy you mentioned, the loud one? I take it he's the reason you're trying to mind your own business over here in the corner? She asked, her voice almost sly as he settled her with a flat stare. She seemed to take the lack of answer as answer, naturally, and chuckled lightly. Come on, he can't be that bad. Isn't it better that someone's trying to be friendly? I'm not here to make friends, was the short answer. She deflated somewhat as her smirk faded a little too. Her pale blue eyes matched with his as she held his gaze, almost exasperated and maybe even a bit. He didn't know the word, and nothing about her gave any other indication to the sudden change in mood. Well, too bad, Shota. You can't expect to be a good hero and not make some friends. Part of the job is working with others, you know. She murmured lightly. He blinked. Since when do you call me by my first name? He grumbled. She laughed. Since you said you weren't here to make friends, she replied easily, her chin falling in her hand as she smiled coolly. I may not be in the hero course like you, but don't think that'll mean you can just ditch me. 3 weeks into the new school year, after showing an impressive amount of promise, backed by an insanely powerful quirk, and no small amount of passive-aggressive pushing on his part, he'd been transferred out of the General Studies department, and placed in heroics. Not a shock, really, but in those 3 weeks of being in General Studies, he hadn't bothered getting to know anyone, since he anticipated he'd be leaving eventually anyway. But she'd not left him alone, even when he tried to stay on the fringes. For whatever reason, she seemed intent on bothering him. So in the end, she became the only person he knew more than just a passing acquaintance, not that he was interested in knowing her that well, but it was hard not to get to know someone when they kept popping up beside you and striking up, very one-sided, conversations. Even now, with them in 2 different classes, she kept showing up, sneaking out of her class and coming to his, seeking him out at lunch, all manner of attempts at keeping them in conversation and knowing one another. It was actually a lot like the way that loudmouth Hisashi Yamada kept bothering him, though she was less loud, and a bit less annoyingly persistent. She herself was a bit of a mystery still, though. A student in general studies and stuck there because while she had excellent grades, she hadn't a quirk, so being a hero was out of the question. He figured if she wanted to she could probably do well in management, or even support. But she still resigned herself to general studies, and figuring out why was honestly too much of a bother, and he didn't want to deal with it. The most striking thing about her, outside of bothering him so much? Something about the way she smiled and acted so pleasant and cheery, it seemed forced. He looked away with an exasperated and bored sigh, and she seemed to smile just a little bit at his resignation to her words. Whatever. Plus. The beeping of a heart monitor came slowly into focus, his mind groggy and body weighing about 1,000 pounds. Drugs had his mind in a haze and his muscles refusing to move like he wanted them to, though they did little to dull down the deep, insatiable ache of pain everywhere. Especially around his elbow and his eyes. The ceiling wouldn't come into focus above him, and he couldn't open his eyes enough anyway, so he stopped trying and let them fall closed again. He'd been going in and out of consciousness for a while since arriving at the hospital. He could remember little of getting here, and near nothing after having his face slammed into the ground at the USJ. He supposed he faintly recalled some fractured image of All Might arriving, but honestly he wasn't sure if he really remembered it, or if it was something his mind had made up for him through all the pain. He did recall Recovery Girl though, and her promise that his class had been spared any serious injuries through all of it, with 13 on the mend too. All Might's intervention gained opportunity to let the other staff arrive in time to prevent casualties, but of course that fool pushed himself too far, and now what minuscule 3 hours he had for hero work was shot. His dreams had been empty as he faded back out again after that, but this last time his mind seemed it wanted to give him something, and the memory it landed on was out of the ordinary. Eneko Izaru. I haven't thought about her in a long time. Not that he really wanted to, mind you. A hard truth of life, maybe, but sometimes people went away and there was nothing to be done. Even he, though he tried hard not to let things like that get to him. Some things always did, no matter who you are or how hard you might try. He didn't like it came to the forefront of his mind now. Especially not after so long. He thought maybe he'd managed to put it away in the back corners of his mind for good. Maybe it was the drugs, maybe they found some way to pry free what locks he had put over those particular memories and lulled them up into the forefront of his unconscious mind. Or maybe it was a combination of that and the pain and exhaustion that came with the injuries. Or maybe even it was just the shock. He hadn't been this injured before, as far as he could recall, and that meant his mind betrayed him and brought back the things he had wanted to leave alone. Aizawa felt his mind slipping away again as the heart monitor became so quiet he could scarcely hear it anymore. He didn't care to fight to stay awake, so he let out a long, low breath as he felt himself sink a little further against the bed. I don't get paid enough to end up like this. Why the hell am I remembering her now? Shada. Do my eyes deceive me, or do you have a friend other than me? Hisashi Yamada, resident loud-mouthed and exaggerated persona of the heroics department classes. Even without using his quirk, it was hard not to hear him across the room, let alone across the building. It was irritating. Aizawa placed his chin against his folded hands in front of him, pointedly keeping from glancing toward the blonde that had practically threw himself across the room to land at the desk side, hands on his hips and smiling widely as his red eyes flicked between Aizawa and the girl sitting across from him from behind his tinted sunglasses, her lips twitching in a somewhat amused smile as she glanced up at him. We are not friends. Aizawa grumbled flatly. Ah, come on now. Of course we are. Yamada chuckled, waving a hand at the rather curt comment and glancing toward the girl. Now, aren't you gonna introduce me to your pretty lady friend? No, she smiled slightly, letting out a breath as she turned to the abrasive blonde and none at all perturbed by the noise, or the comment apparently. Eneko Izaru. She said brightly, good to meet you, you must be Hisashi Yamada, right? He grinned. Oh, has Shota mentioned me? He smirked, she nodded. Several times. Sweet. I guess that means you must like me a little, huh, Shota? Aizawa's sweat dropped, looking the faintest bit annoyed at the assumption, which wasn't true. I told her you were loud and annoying, that's it, was the gruff reply, and somehow it didn't seem to affect the blonde at all. So, how do you two know each other, huh? Yamada asked brightly. Izaru tilted her chin down into her hand. We met in the general studies class, before Shota got switched out. Ah, so I take it you must be in general studies, huh? Yep. She hummed, shrugging a little as she laughed. The hero course had this sort of allure to it, but I'm afraid I wouldn't amount to much without a quirk. Ua was kind enough to waive the no quirk rule of enrolling for me. She didn't seem at all bothered by the fact that she hadn't made it into heroics. But there was something else there, something different in her voice when she said, quirk. He wasn't sure what it was. You got into UA on grades alone? Yamada grinned, his hands slamming down on the table in exaggerated enthusiasm that was the norm for him. Aizawa grumbled slightly as the table tilted for a second, and his folded hands were launched straight up into his nose without warning. Neither Izaru nor Yamada seemed to notice. Izaru seemed to have lifted her elbow off the table in anticipation for it to tilt, though. You gotta be super smart then, huh? Top of your class? I do well enough, she smirked. Somehow the modesty struck a small, brief little twinge of annoyance through his core. You're in the hero course, so you planning on being a rescue-type hero or more the sort that beats up the bad guys? She asked, easily falling into starting a conversation, and Aizawa wished she hadn't. Once this guy got talking he had a hard time stopping. Rescuing folks is all well and cool, but I think I'm gonna go for the action. Your quirk is voice, right? You could probably go for either close or long-range combat with it. Aizawa blocked the conversation out, his chin falling into his hands again as his eyes fell too. About 10 minutes in of endless chatter, Yamada shifted to sit at his desk on Aizawa's left side, and Izaru kept talking to him, though he did most of the actual talking. And what about you, Shada? Yamada trilled after about 15 more minutes, snapping Aizawa away from the brink of dozing as he cracked an eye open and glanced sideways toward the other boy with annoyance flickering across his face. What? Ah, I think I already know what sort of hero Shota's gonna be. Azaru cut in just after, earning Yamada's eyes as she smirked faintly. Aizawa glanced to her too, both eyes open now and narrowed as he watched her silently. His quirk is more suited to go against individual people, rather than large groups, right? He'd probably do really well in stealth situations and restraining villains one-on-one, quick, fast, and deadly. Azaru hummed lightly, erase someone's quirk from a distance and detain them when they're confused. I think a one-on-one, stealth style of fighting fits his personality and quirk type better than those guys that go around being all flashy, don't you? Very true. You gave this some thought, huh? She nodded a little. Maybe you should switch into management. You got an eye for picking out hero images. She laughed softly at that comment, but never replied to it. What do you think, Shota? Her pale blue eye turned on him, suddenly including him in the conversation again as he blinked at her. She smiled, just slightly, calm as ever. She had given it some thought, and what she came up with is what he was already leaning toward, but why would she? He let out a breath, glancing away as his eyes dropped closed and a wry little smile pulled at his lips for half a second. Not bad. Plus, following a danger is near perilous level warning issued for Ua High. Scores of police traveled and set up a perimeter around the school in anticipation of a disastrous event. The classes inside the school continued on as normal for the remainder of the day, until the students were released and went home for the evening without any incidents occurring. While the track recorded for DIN warnings being mostly stellar, there have been a few warnings that were not accompanied by incidents, though all of these were of a danger level, of risky, or lower. This is the first reported warning of a perilous nature that was not accompanied by some accident or conflict in the specified location. The principal of UA reports that he is relieved that nothing came to fruition with the DIN warning and thanks both the police and the staff for their diligence and ability to come together and stand ready in the threat of an emergency. Shota, you're back already? The peace and quiet of the teacher's room was shattered by the usual culprit. He wasn't even surprised anymore, but Aizawa did grumble under his breath at the sharp prickle of pain that appeared in his temple at the volume. Did Recovery Girl clear you? Present Mike's voice lowered only slightly as the blonde stopped beside where Aizawa was sitting. His eyes fell closed from reading the article pulled up on the screen as he sighed. Yes. I'm still a teacher, and I have a class to take care of. Aizawa grumbled. Yamada's sweat dropped slightly with a nervous and somewhat exasperated smile. So hardcore. I think you could afford a sub for a few days, or a week. He sighed. You look like a mummy. Oh yeah, Aizawa just sighed. He did, what with the bandages covering his face with only little slits for his eyes, and his arms in heavy casts across his torso. With his usual attire there was no skin to be seen, so he looked less a man and more a bundle of cloth with his hair falling in tangles about his head, scarf and shoulders. I'm fine, was the low answer, and the one that clearly told Yamada to drop it as he was used to from Aizawa. His red eyes shifted toward the computer screen from under his tinted sunglasses, his brow quirking at the headline. False danger is near, warning at UA High, What's this, yaw throwing back to our school days, Shota? He smirked slightly. I remember this. The whole school was in a buzz about it, He paused a little, his hands falling on his hips. That danger is near dude was rockin' for a while, huh? Before all that hullabaloo, oh yeah, and then all of a sudden he just went and stopped, huh? He tilted his head a bit in thought. I figured he'd just given up the mic after all the boos and heckles he got, What do you think, Shota? And what's with looking it up now, huh? Aizawa stood up stiffly from his seat, not bothering to answer the questions right away as he turned to head out the door again. Danger is near, is dead. He said flatly, his voice low as Yamada stiffened a little at the unexpected answer. He went straight out the door without hesitation, and ignoring the questioning look that appeared on the blonde's face. I have a class to teach. Hello, Yamada called, his voice resonant off the walls of the training floor as he whipped about, waving his arm in animation toward the new face in the building. Good to see ya, Azaru, oh yeah. Aizawa glanced over at the name, his eyes trailing across the raised platforms of stone all around and toward the familiar figure of the girl as she moved inside through the entrance. She waved a hand and smiled at his call toward her, the other hand in her pocket and calm as ever as she moved to stop in front of their small group, consistent of himself, Yamada, their homeroom teacher Mr. Keitaro, and Kayama. Why are you here? Aizawa asked flatly. Azaru smirked slightly at the less than friendly greeting, but she expected it that way. I finished up the project in art history early, so I asked the teacher if I could skip out on the lecture connected with it today. Azaru told him easily, her pale blue eyes shifting from him toward the figure of their teacher. She said it was fine, and if you're alright with it I'd like to watch the training going on for research purposes of course. I have a few of the students over in support asking for suggestions on improving training facilities, and I told them I'd lend a hand. I want to see how everyone does in the training room, and maybe see any places where things can be changed up and improved. Her hands clapped together in front of her softly as she settled that small, calm smile on Mr. Keitaro. Sound alright with you? Mr. Keitaro smiled, giving her a thumbs up. Honesty Mark. You fibbed a little there, but I can imagine it's just because you also want to spend time watching your friends in action too, so I'll let it slide. Long as you stay a good distance away from the fighting itself, I don't mind at all. Aizawa blinked, his eyes narrowing at the words as his attention snapped back toward Izaru. She lied? Chimin Keitaro, homeroom teacher to Class 1A, of which Aizawa and Yamada were a part of. And once upon a time pro-hero by the name of Candor. His quirk was called Truth-Teller, and with it he could easily gauge the words of people he heard as being honest, or being lies. He also had the ability to compel the people he talked to into saying what was on their minds, which basically meant he could force anyone into being brutally honest. It was a useful enough quirk when interrogating criminals and uncovering villain syndicates and cells, while also revealing the hidden portions of terrorist plans and the like. The brutally honest part of his quirk also seemed to have an affect on Mr. Keitaro's personality too, since he oftentimes said some brutally honest things out loud before apologizing, as if he couldn't help himself. Though Aizawa was fairly sure that nowadays, Mr. Keitaro couldn't really use the compulsion part of his quirk very well anymore, and was probably the reason his career as a pro had ended in a very early retirement. But either way, there wasn't a way to lie to him, at all. And the sudden admission of Izaru, fibbing, in her words caught his immediate interest. "Thank you very much," Izaru told the teacher with a small smile and a nod. Aizawa's attention from Izaru shifted when he felt Kayama inch a little closer to him out of nowhere. Speaking of Nomori Kayama, an even more odd personality that seemed to have latched onto him where he didn't want it, and recently too. She wasn't as loud as Yamada, and she wasn't as much mystery as Izaru seemed to be, but she was a bit perverted, and incredibly clingy, as well as flirtatious, which was annoying in itself. And made even more annoying by the fact that she wasn't even in this class, she was a year ahead of them, and yet she seemed insistent on being here and not in her own class. Oh, and her hero costume. She wasn't wearing hardly anything at all. Which didn't bother him too much, but it was another annoyance. Does she help out the other departments often? Kayama asked him lowly. She made it sound like they actually asked for her help. Isn't she in general studies though? She was admitted into UA without a quirk, and solely based on her academic skill, was the short reply. He saw the surprise dawn on Kayama's face. His hand lifted from his pocket as he pushed his hair out of his face with a small sigh. She helps out the other departments because she has extra time on her hands, and she's intelligent enough they like her opinions. He never saw Izaru actually working on any of her own classwork, mind you, let alone in actual class. For a while he couldn't imagine why she hadn't gotten in trouble yet, or why the teachers seemed content to let her wander the school and bother them, and him at all hours of the day when she should have been in her own class. Her being out of her assigned classes and wandering the school had become a common occurrence since school started and he had met her, so considering she hadn't been expelled yet, she must really have been keeping up with her schoolwork fairly well and been doing an excellent job at it to be earning what leniency she seemed to have. So with all that extra time on her hands, she lent her head and her ideas to the other departments when she wasn't hanging around the heroics classes. The management classes seemed to like bouncing ideas off of her, while he'd heard mention that support students oftentimes asked for her help with technical issues involving computers. Apparently, she wasn't just smart in her general education, she was something of a computer whiz too. All in all, Aneko Izaru was UA's definition of a model student, discounting the lack of a quirk. All of the teachers and staff seemed to like her. She was polite and kind and seemed to work hard at getting along with everyone she could. She never got frustrated, she never got angry nor upset, she was always calm and pleasant, she kept ahead of her classmates and finished her work in record time, and always did it with exemplary marks. She was willing to lend a hand to anyone bothered to ask her for it, and she didn't seem to mind dividing her time between people. If anything, he thought maybe she did enjoy assisting the other departments, at least a little. But he'd noticed it from the start, the way she smiled, her calm and tranquility, even her excitement, it still looked a little forced. Not all the time, no, but all of the times he saw her smile he swore. Something wasn't quite right, it wasn't quite real. It had been 4 months since the start of school at UA, and he wasn't sure he knew hardly anything about her even with how much they did see of one another. And the comment from his truth-teller teacher about a lie somewhere in her explanation for being here, that had his interest so easily. Ah, so she's the one with the best grades in the whole school, then? Kayama hummed, smirking. A woman with such intelligence. It's kind of hot. His sweat dropped, his eyes dropping closed as he shook his head a little. Quit thinking perverted things. Cool, you're gonna see some cool moves. Oh yeah. Yamada smirked. Izaru smiled. I hope so, but I don't want you guys to be distracted though, alright? Pretend I'm not here and focus on training like you usually would. You got it. Yamada grinned. Fine. Aizawa muttered lowly. Will do. Kayama smiled. Great. The class went by as it normally would, and soon enough he did somewhat forget that Izaru was there. She'd moved herself off to the side and stood there, her eyes scanning the whole of the building and the people using their quirks jumping up and down the risen stone platforms, brawling, practicing, working on their aim, precision, defenses, whatnot. He never heard her say anything, and when class drew to an end and he spared a glance back over toward her, she was right where she was at the start, not looking at him, her eyes trailing the roof slowly, her hands hooked behind her neck. Good work today everyone, Mr. Keitaro called to the students, all of their eyes turning on him as they halted in the constant movement, most of them huffing and out of breath. You can all change out of your costumes and meet back in class. I'll be handing back your tests from yesterday. Some of you did really well, the rest of you not so much. Lito. I do mean you. Oh. Forgive me, did I say your name out loud? My bad. There's that bit of honesty without thinking. Yes sir. Alright. Izuru, what did y'all think? Pretty cool, right? Yamada nearly sung the words as Izuru moved from her sideline watching post and over towards him as the class started to file toward the exit. So many of you have great quirks, and your practical skills like hand-to-hand combat and agility are coming along well too. Izuru hummed. Aizawa halted beside Yamada in a semi-unconscious decision to wait for them both. The raised mounds of stone and cement work well as physical tests, and also do well as serving as small little clearings for people to work on their own. If stealth is your thing, you can practice hiding between them, and if pure physical force is your track, they work just as well as using them as expendable punching bags. She mused, no doubt that research she intended to do while here. Her eyes moved past Yamada toward said mounds again. Whatever the lie had been, it must not have been about taking notes. This sort of facility works well as a general training ground for most any type of quirk. It's probably pretty low cost too, though maybe lacking on being a controlled environment. The more it's used, the less safe it is, and more messy. Her hands moved up to hook behind her neck. I'm thinking it might be better in future to have someone on hand with a quirk that can stabilize the bits that have been messed with, and knocked loose. Izaru's voice faded into nothing mid-sentence, her shoulders tensing up and her calm expression fading into a seriousness and panic he hadn't ever seen in her before. It was such a foreign thing to see from her. For a minute he just stared. She ran straight past them, both him and Yamada, and she did it in an instant. They were only just starting to turn after her when they heard her yell. Watch it. Why? Izaru launched herself straight into Kayama, throwing her weight against the other, half-naked girl as her arms wrapped tightly around her, and they were both sent stumbling backwards into the ground hard enough to knock the breath from them. Boom. The space between Aizawa and Yamada, and where Izaru and Kayama hit the ground in a tangle of limbs, was suddenly slammed into by a massive slab of concrete. The ground shook violently from the impact, caving in under the weight and sending up a thick cloud of dust. Izaru and Kayama seemed to miss being crushed by a few inches, and only because the former had jumped to throw them out of the way. What? The EA? Yamada practically screamed beside him, looking about as panicked and confused as a child, clearly struggling for words as Aizawa remained fixed in his spot, his mind having a hard time making sense of what happened. How did she know something was falling? Did she see it and react? His back had been turned to that direction, but he would have heard a slab of cement of that size come loose, surely? What few people that had been filtering out the building and hadn't made it outside yet all halted, whipping around at the sudden wash of noise and eyes wide as they stared at the cloud of dust that sprung up. Aizawa's eyes darted away from the slab of concrete sitting in the crater over toward the figures of Izaru and Kayama, his ears catching sound of one of them groaning a little. Izaru, who was holding the back of her head as she sat on the ground near a stunned Kayama, who was glancing feverishly between the other girl and the massive weight that would have crushed her if. TCH. OWW. Izaru hissed under her breath, eyes scrunched closed as she held her head in her hands. She must have smacked it against the ground when both she and Kayama had hit the floor. Are you okay? Yamada snapped, his voice making the floor shake a little and earning a hiss of pain from Aizawa. Some of the other students were moving back inside hastily with Mr. Keitaro at the forefront. What happened? The teacher asked instantly. Yamada whipped around in his direction, still panicking slightly in his exaggerated manner, all the more exaggerated for it. They almost got crushed. Yamada shrilled, his hands bobbing back and forth in finger guns. But Izaru saved Kayama, oh yeah. TCH, pipe down. Aizawa snapped lowly, his feet instinctively bringing him forward toward Izaru and Kayama as Mr. Keitaro moved over toward them too. That thing is huge. Did she see it falling? Whoa. That's crazy. A few of the students had backtracked into the building to crowd around and stare, hushed words and murmurs passing among them as Aizawa pulled up behind his teacher. Yamada was struggling to get over his shock and follow. Are you two all right? Mr. Keitaro asked quickly, bending down on one knee beside both girls and eyes trailing over them both looking for injuries. Kayama seemed to be snapped out of a sort of daze at the question, her eyes moving toward their teacher as she nodded. Yeah, she mumbled. Aizawa's eyes locked onto Izaru as her hands fell from holding her head slowly. He hadn't heard the cement nor the stone crack, he hadn't heard the slab break off and start to fall. How did she know? How did she know quick enough to react as fast as she had? Even if she had seen it break off, there couldn't have been enough time for her to get over to Kayama and get them both out of the way like that. No one had reactions that fast, especially not someone with no quirk. Not unless she knew something wasn't right, before ever seeing the danger itself. Did she somehow know there was something wrong, before the slab even fell? And reacted to that feeling, before reacting to the actual falling cement? I'm good too, though I knocked my head a bit. Izaru mumbled, shooting the teacher a somewhat pained smile. It's nothing bad though, really. We both managed to avoid the real danger all around, thankfully. Yes. You just saved me. Kayama murmured, her eyes flashing as she clapped her hands in front of her, and dipped her head. Thank you, Azaru. You don't need to thank me, Azaru intoned, looking a little embarrassed at the gesture from the older girl. Modesty again. Nonsense. You did a fine thing, I thank you for keeping Kayama safe. Even if it was a little reckless to rush forward like that, no matter. Mr. Keitaro smiled. I am glad to see you both got away without any serious injuries, so you get an A+ in heroics today, Azaru. He gave her a thumbs up and a grin as she blinked at it. Mr. Keitaro climbed to his feet again and offered Kayama a hand up. She took it easily and turned to give Azaru a hand. You must have some pretty quick reaction times to have noticed Kayama in danger and be able to get both of you out of the way. Mr. Keitaro mused. Azaru took Kayama's hand as she got pulled to her feet. She gave the teacher a small, calm smile that was, for the first time, so forced he was sure something else hid behind it. I suppose I do. I saw the slab break away and noticed she was a bit close to it. I wasn't sure if she was close enough to get hurt at first, but I figured better safe than sorry. Azaru answered easily. Mr. Keitaro nodded with a small smile in return, though not before his grin faded, just for a small second, when she answered the question. Aizawa noticed it, the small little tell, the tap of Mr. Keitaro's index finger against his leg, a tell he had picked up on since starting school, and what it meant. She told a lie, a good plan, and quick thinking. That's almost exactly the sort of thing a hero would have running through their heads in such a situation. Mr. Keitaro told her lightly, nothing else about his person nor his voice telling to the notice of a fib. Brave too, I'd have thought you'd be a bit more wary of jumping into danger since you don't have a quirk. Kayama smiled. Your courage is a bit of a turn on, ya know. You were super cool, Yamada grinned. Don't ya think so too, Shada? Her pale blue eyes matched with Aizawa's, and she blinked. I suppose. He mumbled lowly, his eyes narrowing. He saw something like nervousness light up in her eyes, just for a small second before he broke their eyeline. She knew. Somehow she knew something wasn't right. That's the only way. But how? And what is she lying about? Why did Mr. Keitaro never call her out on it either?